India is continuing to step up its efforts to evacuate its citizens from the crisis areas of Ukraine at this time. On Thursday, Akshita, the Prime Minister dialed Russian President Vladimir Putin, expressing concern over the safety of thousands of Indian nationals, many of them students, still stuck in Ukraine.
That's right. The Prime Minister also there, Shiv, conveying India's priority of ensuring a safe exit for all Indian nationals. Modi has also urged Putin to resolve differences through dialogue. That's not all. On multiple levels now we're having conversations. The External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has spoken to his counterparts in Ukraine's neighboring Hungary, in Slovakia and in Romania, who've agreed to cooperate fully in facilitating the evacuation of Indians. So Indian embassies in these nations are also assisting in the evacuation operations. The focus now, Shiv, is on ensuring these Indian nationals somehow make it to the Ukraine borders, from where the embassies in these nations will step in.
And that's right. You know, there are many different countries. We'll show you a map. We've got a map, in fact, that we're going to put out on our screens in just a moment, of the neighboring countries, including countries like Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, etc., that are going to actually help in a land-based evacuation. So people of Indian origin, coordinating with the External Affairs Ministry and the embassy in Ukraine, will be able to be extracted via the land border, and that's because the airports at this time are completely shut. Let's listen into some reactions.
We've also asked our embassies, our ambassadors in the countries neighboring Ukraine, and I mentioned these, Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary, to send teams of their officers to the border areas with Ukraine to facilitate the exit of Indian nationals from Ukraine, to permit them to come into their countries, so where they can be safely evacuated back to India.
We are tensed because we want to come back to India, but the situation is not like that, because the airport has been blocked and all the flights have also been cancelled. And in this situation, our degree is also even more important, because we are final year medical students, and all these 5.5 years we have worked very hard for our degree, and our parents are also, they are very much tensed, and they also want us to come back to India, but the situation is not like that. And so we kindly request the Indian government to evacuate us in some or the other way, by taking our situation under consideration and talking to the Ukraine government about our degree.
Good morning, my name is Aisha Sheikh. मेरा नाम आयशा शेख है. मैं गुजरात से हूँ. मेरा घर भरूच में है और मैं यहाँ यूक्रेन में फंसी हुई हूँ. हम रह रहे हैं
A lot of families here in India also had a sleepless night, because they're very, very concerned about what happens to their loved ones who are stuck currently in Ukraine. The airspace is closed, public transport shut down, which is why right now it's very difficult, Shiv, for these students, or for that matter, all the Indian nationals. About 16,000 of them, we're being told, still there. And there's a lot of curiosity among our viewers also about the conversation that's happened between Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Putin last night.
Absolutely, and you know, it's a crisis. There have been multiple advisories that have been issued, but the crisis has become only larger because of the rapidity, Akshita, with which things have actually moved forward. So thousands of students and thousands of Indian nationals now need to be extracted by land. In a few moments, we'll show you a map of the number of countries and land routes through which the extraction and evacuation may actually take place. Now let's show you the top defining images. The top defining images of where things are at overnight and early this morning with Ukraine. The top defining images, and I want to start now with the first defining image that we have from the Ukraine conflict. The students and their crisis is something that we will be telling you a little bit more about. The Indian government is likely to hold a press conference in a short while, but here's number one in our pack of the defining images from last night. The most compelling image of an air defense activation over Kiev, with an aircraft apparently being shot down. Huge explosion near a high-rise building in Kiev. That's the first big image. Let's get you to the second big image. Russia mounting its offensive in Ukraine with armored vehicles. Armored vehicles outside the Chernobyl power plant. Remember, Chernobyl is the site of a 1986 nuclear disaster. These are images from Chernobyl of armored personnel carriers and Russian tanks surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear facility. This was the site of a huge accident earlier, and these are images from there. Startling, shattering, terrifying images. Number 3 in our pack of fresh images of battered armored personnel carriers, tragically the body of a soldier, a devastated landscape, vehicles on fire, shattered columns in one part of Ukraine. This is in the Kharkiv area, and India Today is reporting from here as well. That's image number 3 that we've gotten for you, right? Gaurav Sawant reporting from Mariupol, an image that's been picked up and gone viral on social media by many international agencies. He's been speaking to people as well, and he has shells exploding behind him. I want you to listen in to this image. Just listen into it.
See is motion screen now to tell you more about the military movement that's taking place towards the Ma'am, you've been standing in this queue for quite some time now. Military presence in this area. You can look at bombed and pockmarked houses here, but what you can also...
And finally, images of the protests that are taking place in Moscow. This has also become one of the defining images. You're seeing a lot of Ukraine, you're not seeing a lot of Russia, but India Today will ensure that doesn't happen, because there are huge anti-war protests that are taking place in Russia. They've been made illegal. Nobody's allowed to stage these, and that's why many people are getting arrested and detained in Moscow as well. People are not allowed unauthorized assembly and anti-war protests. So this is happening in Berlin, it's happening in Australia, and it's happening in the country that has attacked Russia as well. This is in the country's capital, Moscow.
So those are the 5 defining images that Shiv just got for you of what's playing out in Ukraine. I want to bring our focus back to an aspect that we're tracking very, very closely here on India Today. What happens to the Indian nationals who are currently in Ukraine? We're getting you voices of some of the Indians who are stranded in Ukraine with no help and no direction of what to do next. Joining us now is Wahab, an Indian student who's currently in Kharkiv in Ukraine. And from Kharkiv, we've been getting you many worrying reports of the kind of explosions also that have been heard. Wahab, thank you for joining us here on India Today. First, I hope you're safe.
Yes, I'm safe. First of all, I'm not a student. I'm here for last 14 years.
Okay.
Okay, so here things are quite okay this morning. Okay, there were shelling sounds last night. So according to the request of our mentors, we were in the bunkers till 6 a.m. So now we have sent the students up for refreshing. So hopefully they all will be back to the bunkers in next half an hour.
What is the situation there right now? What is the situation right now? We've seen explosions happening in different parts of the city. Are you hearing anything? Are you getting any advice on what you need to do next?
The advice which we are waiting is from the Embassy of India and the Government of India, what we should be doing next, because we are at the farmost point from the place which we have to reach, the borders of Poland or Hungary or Slovakia, which country the embassy is suggesting us. So we are just waiting for the information and the means of transport, because in this situation, the road transport to this part of to the borders will be very difficult. So we are waiting for a feasible, the best option, which can carry at least 4,000 to 5,000 students, Indian students who are stranded in the city of Kharkiv.
Abdul, we've seen huge lines outside ATMs, huge lines inside supermarkets and things like that. Are you doing okay? That's my final question to you. Are you doing okay in terms of groceries and money and things like that? Or are there shortages?
Actually, when the first explosion happened, the first thing most of us did was going to the supermarket, buying groceries for the next 3 days. And, there are 3 or 4 Indian mess in Kharkiv city. And the authorities of the mess was very good, and they were all prepared, at least so that they can feed up to 1,000 students for the coming 3 days.
Okay, Wahab, thank you for joining us here on India Today. Stay safe, and any communication that we get from the government, we will ensure that we relay that across to you as well, and all the other Indian nationals who are currently stranded in Ukraine. The government is working overtime to try and figure out how they can bring them back to India, ensure they're safe. With things playing out as they are, you see that on your screen, so the multiple explosions and the kind of situation that's playing out right now across Ukraine. It's not limited to one part of Ukraine anymore. I also want to focus on the response, Shiv, and we've spoken a lot about this. The response that's come in from the West. No military support, as expected. Sanctions and more sanctions has been the response.
That's been the only response. You know, even while Ukraine is falling, it has been paralyzed, and I want to keep those pictures on air, not Biden full frame. Let's keep those pictures of the attacks and the firefight that's happening in Ukraine on air at all times. India's middle ground approach to the Ukraine crisis has actually amplified things a great deal to where they are on right now. President Biden had spoken yesterday to the press. He had spoken about sanctions. He had spoken about consultations with India. He said consultations with India are still on when it comes to being aligned on the Ukraine issue. But he said that it hasn't been fully resolved just yet. He was responding to a question over whether India was fully on board with the United States on the Russian aggression. On the one hand, Ukraine believes India is a global leader and wants Prime Minister Modi to intervene and diffuse tensions. And on the other hand, the US expects India to be on board with the West. India cannot take sides at a time when the West is not united on how, Akshita, they're going to have a coordinated approach in their response against India.
It's a conundrum for sure, because India has that historic, time-tested friendship with Russia. At the same time, there is also what needs to be kept in mind, the strategic partnership with the United States, which has grown at an unprecedented pace over the last decade and a half. And that's why India has been treading very carefully on this issue. Yesterday, of course, Prime Minister Modi spoke to Russian President Putin. India's stand is very, very clear here, Shiv, that dialogue is necessary between NATO and Russia to dissolve this crisis at the earliest. But it's interesting to hear exactly what Biden said. Let's play out exactly what Biden said when he was asked about India and whether India is backing United States.
So India is one of your major defense partners. Is India fully in sync with United States on Russia?
We're in consultation with India today. We haven't resolved that completely.
One more.
India is in a unique yet precarious position when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia crisis. On the one hand, Ukraine believes India is a global leader and wants Prime Minister Narendra Modi to intervene to diffuse tensions. On the other hand, the United States of America expects New Delhi to be on board with the West. And that's the reason why President Biden said that consultations are underway, but issues have not been resolved yet. India cannot take sides at a time when the West is not united on how they are going to have a coordinated approach in their response against Russia. Russia, on the other hand, has been a support structure for India at various international fora, including the United Nations, where it holds veto power. And that's the reason why India is having a balanced approach when it comes to looking at the Ukraine-Russia crisis, as also trying to ensure that it does not rile either the Russian side or the Western Bloc. In New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
Now, the Western powers are getting ready to impose even more sanctions because, as Akshita was saying, they're in a conundrum. They're not united. They don't know what to do. They haven't war-gamed in their mind, that Putin would go the distance as far as invading Ukraine is concerned. Whether it is the UK, the United States, NATO headquarters, there is total confusion on what the next steps of the intervention will likely be, even if there's going to be an intervention at all. There's no consensus. The British Prime Minister says the UK will respond with a massive package of sanctions. The US President, you heard him, speaking late last night, India time, saying even more severe sanctions are going to happen. But Ukraine and the world are wondering, has Ukraine been led up the garden path and simply been hung out to dry by a totally divided Western world? Take a look.
Ukraine is under attack.
Russia from across the border launched airstrikes at targets within Ukraine, signaling the start of war.
The Russian president declared a war on the record. Should I play the video of your president? Ambassador, shall I do that right now, or you can't confirm it? Do not interrupt me, please. Thank you.
Then don't ask me questions when you are speaking. Proceed with your statement.
Anyway, you declared the war. It is the responsibility of this body to stop the war.
And as with the beginning of any battle, there has been confusion and misinformation riding the airwaves, distorting the understanding of the situation. What could be confirmed early in the day are the 6 initial targets that Russian arms has hit in Ukraine. Military headquarters near the capital Kyiv got hit by cruise and ballistic missiles. In the attack launched simultaneously across the country, Russian missiles hit 3 major Ukrainian cities in the east: Kramatorsk, close to the rebel-held region of Luhansk; Kharkiv, near the Russian border; and Dnipro, which in 1943, then known as Dnieper, had seen one of the biggest and bloodiest battles of the Second World War. To the south of Ukraine, there have been reports of the international airport at Kherson having suffered damage. Aside from this, unconfirmed Ukrainian sources claimed that Russian troops have been spotted in the city of Odessa, which is close to the border with Transnistria, that is itself a Russian-backed breakaway region of neighboring Moldova. Ukraine is Europe's second biggest country by landmass, and its attacker, Russia, is the biggest. Besides its border with Russia, Ukraine has 6 other neighbors, but with Belarus to the north firmly on the Russian side, and with Crimea, which used to be part of Ukraine, invaded and annexed by Russia in 2014, the country now faces hostile borders on 3 sides, stretching across the north, to the east, to the south. The point of conflict in 2022 has been along the line of contact, a temporary border that demarcates Ukraine from the 2 regions that separated from it in 2014, aided and abetted by Russia. Luhansk and Donetsk have been in a state of constant friction with Ukrainian forces, and the breakaway regions claim more than double the area that they currently control as separate from the national identity of Ukraine. Yet the actual bone of contention in this war that has just broken out remains a matter of influence. Moscow cannot allow Ukraine joining the NATO, and it has proved that Russia will go to war if necessary to prevent that from happening. Since the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, the US-influenced North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, has been constantly expanding eastwards. It added 11 countries that were part of the Soviet Eastern Bloc, buffer states of the USSR. The 3 Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, once a part of the Soviet Union, joined NATO in 2004. With Russia feeling encircled by NATO, the move to let Ukraine in would mean that NATO would for the first time include what used to be a major Soviet republic, and it would take possible NATO deployments dangerously close to Russia.
Regarding using the armed forces abroad, well, of course, we signed the treaties yesterday. And in these treaties with both Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, there are articles saying about us providing those republics help, including military help. As long as there is an ongoing conflict, by this decision, we are making it clear that if necessary, we intend to stand by our obligations.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin on February 21st, in a televised address, warned that if Ukraine were to join NATO, it would serve as a direct threat to the security of Russia. He described Ukraine as a springboard for a NATO strike against Russia. And that is something that the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, will not let happen, even if that means going to war with Ukraine. We've got reporters on the ground who've been capturing all of those very compelling images you've seen on your screen firsthand. These are images that our reporters are seeing through their own eyes and bringing to us firsthand. Maria Pysarenko continues to be with us. She's our brave reporter. She's been with us, in a bomb shelter. She's been in the metro. She's away from her family, but reporting continuously because it is her country that's at war right now. Maria, the sun is up. It's day 2 of this big invasion. What's happening on the ground right now where you are? What's the mood? What's happening?
So, yes, wanted to update some news about this airstrike we had experienced at 4 in the morning. So the strike was 3 hours ago. The updated information from the emergency service of Ukraine goes that 8 people are injured during this strike. So the strike was above the residential area of the left bank of Kiev, and there were now we have official information that there was an aircraft and there also was a missile. So 2 Russian objects were shot down. One fell onto the private house, and there was a fire which is now put off. And also another piece of this aircraft fell at the 9-story building, which was on fire for several for hours. And now also the fire has been put down, and the casualties are growing. We see this information about 8 people injured during this event, during this fire. So that is the information about the morning strikes in Kiev, but the information about what is going to happen is also very worrying. We've seen the reports that the columns, the lines of Russian tanks are heading from Konotop, which is Sumska Oblast, and also from Chernobyl, which is sorry, I just need to listen if there is
sure
a new blast. No new blast, because sometimes we hear these explosions far away,
I can imagine.
and they go like every 20 minutes, I guess, and you do not know for sure which explosion is happening. Where is it?
Scary.
In Kiev or is it outskirts of Kiev? They are far away, really, but they're very loud today, because yesterday there was a different story. They were not so loud as today. So back to the story about the Russian tanks. The reports are saying that the tanks are heading from also Chernobyl exclusive zone. There were yesterday reports that Russian military, Russian equipment was seen on the object, on the near the confinement where the force energy block is located, and the nuclear power station was under control of Russians. And now we see the reports that tanks are going from there to heading Kiev, and on their way the bridge in Ivankiv was blown up by the Ukrainian army, so that these tanks could be stopped. So for now, this is the information we are receiving about the situation in Kiev and the outskirts. And I'm staying here. Sometimes I need to go to the bomb shelter because the strikes appear to be closer and closer, and stay there for some minutes, I guess. I'm staying in the bomb shelter because I have one beneath my house, and a lot of Kievans are staying today in metro station. They have spent their
Maria, did you spend the night in the bomb shelter?
Can we also request, Maria, if you could turn your camera around, show us what's happening around you, if it's possible?
Yeah.
So now I'm in the yard of house, so nothing I can show you, just people standing near the bomb shelter. Sometimes this is the sign showing the bomb shelter, and sometimes they're coming out of bomb shelter to breathe, to see the light, to get some information, because there is no connection down there. And the curfew is now should be over, and people should be able to move across the streets. And I will later go and see what the situation in the streets.
You know, Maria, that bomb shelter that was there behind you with the steps going down, the report that you sent us from inside that bomb shelter has been so compelling. It has disturbed so many people. You know, people are wondering, if this becomes an extended conflict, how are people going to live inside those bomb shelters? But apart from that, the reason why it has become so scary, you were talking about Chernobyl, we had images on our screens of that in just a moment. But I want to ask you, you know, the image, Maria, of an aircraft apparently being shot down in or near Kiev, how far away from you is that happening?
It's a little more than 10 kilometers from the city center, so
not far.
It's the residential area, not very far, yes. So it's the region where a lot of people are living, so they're living on the left bank of Kiev and come to work to the city center, to the right bank of Kiev. So a lot of residential areas, dense populations there, very disturbing images, really. And this is actually a new step, so to say, in this. Also, one more explosion was heard just this minute as we are speaking. So yes, this is really full course, full scale invasion of Russia, contrary to what they said like a week ago. Putin said that nobody is going to invade no one, and now we see full course, full-scale invasion with also attacks on civilians, on residential quarters, and one more strike is also happening right now. So that's that for now. Okay. I will later go out in the streets and see maybe something changed, maybe more military, and report about that.
Maria, at any point you need to go back into that bunker, let us know, because your safety is, of course, our topmost priority. But I want to understand from you where all the residents of Kiev are. Have most of them shifted to the kind of bunkers that you're at these bomb shelters? You told us that many of them are at metro stations. And what's the kind of provision that's been made to ensure food, water, all of that reaches you?
Actually, there are not much people who are willing to go to bomb shelters. So now in Kyiv, the situation is the following. Yesterday, a lot of people fled the city, and there are far less cars can be seen in the streets. Some people are staying at their homes as normal because they live, for example, in the outskirts or some districts of the city which are further from the center, and the official buildings of the office of the president, parliamentary buildings, are here in the city center, so they could be possible targets of attacks. And people who live further from the center are not so afraid about possible attacks on them. And people who are staying today, this night, have been staying in metro stations, are just, it was their will. It was not mandatory to stay in bomb shelters. That was just their choice, so that they could feel more comfortable. And Kyiv metro service was kind to let all these people in. And since yesterday, the transit is free of charge in all the public transport in Kyiv. So the city administration is understanding the situation and changes the rules because it's martial law, because it's invasion happening here in our city, in our country.
Maria, one last question before we let you go for the moment. What about shortages? We've seen those huge lines outside supermarkets. If the Russian army has surrounded Kiev now and they're closing in, what about supplies and groceries and food and other essential items? Is there a sufficient supply or things running out?
No, things are not running out in grocery shops. The produce and the grocery are still there, and people are buying. Yes, they're bulk buying because of all of the news. And I bet you that there will be no real Russian plan of circling Kyiv because Ukrainian army is repelling the attack. Ukrainian army is strong now, and the capital city is also has the strong defense by the territorial defense, and now a lot of people, volunteers, are being drafted into territorial defense units. So that is what's happening, and as far as I see, the defense of Kyiv will be strong. And right now, one more explosion can be heard. Yeah.
Maria, stay safe. Like Akshita just said, your safety is our total priority. You've been reporting really fearlessly. Your family must be worried about you. Please give them our regards. We will keep coming back to you for your reporting. Okay, stay safe. We'll try and catch up with you in just a few minutes. We're taking a very quick break. Immediately after that, we've got a piece of breaking news coming in from Kiev and Kharkiv that takes this entirely to the next level. These are images that you must watch right after this break. Stay with us.